Did you know there was a time when the US government made it a crime for its own citizens to own gold? Not just to trade it or hoard it, but to simply possess it. If you were caught with gold coins, bullion, or even gold certificates after the deadline, you could face a fine of $10,000. That's like hundreds of thousands. To end up to 10 years in prison. Overnight, Americans were forced to turn in their most ancient store of wealth, exchanging it for paper dollars, all because their government demanded it. Imagine being told that the money you trusted, the treasure you saved, the asset passed down through generations, was suddenly illegal for you to hold. This wasn't a scam run by criminals. It was written into law by the highest office in the land, and it changed the course of our financial system forever. To understand how something this extraordinary could happen, we need to step back into one of the darkest chapters of American economic history: the Great Depression. By 1933, the United States was broken. 1 in 4 Americans was out of work. Factories sat idle, banks were failing by the thousands, and ordinary people were losing everything. The banking system was collapsing because depositors were demanding gold. At that time, the dollar was backed by gold under the classical gold standard. Every paper dollar could, in theory, be exchanged for a fixed amount of gold, $20.67 per ounce. When confidence cracked, people rushed to withdraw actual gold, draining reserves and threatening to bring the entire financial system down. Enter Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Sworn in as president in March 1933, he faced an economy in free fall. He needed a bold solution, something radical enough to stop the panic. That solution came less than a month later. On April 5, 1933, Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102. The order made it illegal for private citizens to own most forms of gold. People had until the end of April to surrender their gold to the Federal Reserve or a member bank. In return, they would be paid in paper dollars at the fixed price of $20.67 per ounce. On paper, the government claimed this was necessary to stabilize the banking system, to prevent hoarding, and to give the Federal Reserve the ability to expand the money supply. In reality, it was one of the largest forced transfers of wealth in modern history. Americans dutifully lined up to hand over their coins, their bars, even family heirlooms, under threat of punishment. Some may resisted hiding gold in basements or burying it in fields, but most complied. Here's the part that really stings. After collecting all that gold, the government didn't just sit on it. In January 1934, less than a year later, the Gold Reserve Act revalued gold from $20.67 per ounce to $1.35. This single stroke devalued the dollar by 40%. The government had just confiscated gold from its citizens at the old price, only to immediately raise its official value. In other words, the people handed over their wealth, and the government pocketed the instant profit. This wasn't a minor policy tweak. It was a deliberate reset of the rules of money. By seizing gold and devaluing the dollar, the Roosevelt administration gave itself the power to inflate the money supply far beyond what the gold standard had previously allowed. It allowed the government to spend more, borrow more, and launch the New Deal programs that would define the era. For the banks, it was salvation. For the government, it was control. But for ordinary Americans, it was theft, dressed up as law. Let's pause here to make this personal. Imagine your grandparents saving gold coins over a lifetime. Suddenly, the government declares them illegal, forces them to hand them over at a fixed price, then immediately revalues the gold higher. Your family loses, the government gains, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's not a hypothetical. That's what happened to millions of Americans in 1933. The move was controversial even then. Lawsuits reached the Supreme Court in what became known as the Gold Clause cases. In 1935, the Supreme Court narrowly upheld Roosevelt's actions by a single vote. The ruling set a chilling precedent. In times of crisis, the government could rewrite the rules of money, override private contracts, and seize wealth in the name of national interest. So, who really benefited? The government, first and foremost. It instantly boosted the value of its reserves by billions, financing the New Deal without raising taxes in a depression. The banks were next in line. Transferring citizens' gold into the vaults of the Federal Reserve restored confidence and bailed them out. And then there were the wealthy and politically connected who found ways to shift gold overseas or convert it into exempt assets. Losers. Millions of Americans who trusted the system and saw their tangible wealth vanish, exchanged for paper dollars that immediately lost value. Now fast forward to today. Why should this matter to you? Because the principle hasn't changed. When the system is threatened, governments will do whatever it takes to preserve it, even if that means stripping citizens of their wealth. In 1933, it was gold. In 2008, it was taxpayer-funded bailouts, or banks too big to fail. In 2013, Cyprus seized a portion of citizens' bank deposits. And inflation itself is a form of confiscation. You may not see agents seizing your gold, but every year, prices rise faster than wages. Your savings, by less. It's wealth transfer in slow motion, hidden in plain sight. The lesson from 1933 is stark. Don't assume your wealth is untouchable. The rules can and will change. If the government once made gold illegal, what stops it from freezing digital accounts or seizing assets today? The precedent has been set. This is why true financial freedom requires assets and knowledge that stand outside the reach of sudden policy shifts. When America stole its citizens' gold, it wasn't pitched as theft. It was framed as rescue. Patriotism. But the outcome was clear. The system survived, and the people paid. History whispers the same warning across generations. If they could take wealth once, they can take it again. So the next time you hear a politician promise stability or a banker assure you your money is safe, remember 1933? Protect yourself, not with blind faith, but with knowledge. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers, and I'll show you where to look.